Given the regrettable place the MCU has ended up in recent years, I thought we'd take a nostalgic journey back in time to the very beginning with the film that started it all, 2008's Iron Man, a film directed by Jon Favreau and written by Mark Fergus, Art Markham, Matt Holloway, and Hawk Ostby. The film had been in pre-production for about 10 years prior to its release. Along the way, there had been many writers and directors attached to the film and many big-name actors in the mix for the role of Tony Stark, including Nicolas Cage and Tom Cruise. Robert Downey Jr. was chosen by Favreau because, as he revealed in an interview in 2014 with 103 Jack FM, I realized that the character seemed to line up with Robert in all the good and bad ways, and the story of Iron Man was really the story of Robert's career. But the studio needed quite a bit of convincing first. RDJ was paid just $500,000 for the role, a far cry from the $80 million he'll be receiving for returning as Doctor Doom in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. Tony Stark is a billionaire weapons manufacturer and all-round playboy celebrity. Having inherited his father's empire, he's making weapons for the US military, and during the opening scene in Afghanistan, the likeable but self-absorbed Tony really shows us how he likes to bask in his own self-importance. The soldiers escorting him are starstruck by his presence, and he's very charming and suave, charismatic and witty. But one of the military trucks explodes, and all of the soldiers are killed trying to protect him, and it turns out the attackers made use of one of Tony's very own weapons. He's injured in the attack and taken prisoner by an organization calling themselves the Ten Rings, led by the captain of the USS Kelvin. But in this film, he's going to go by the name Raza. The film flashes back 3 days earlier to Las Vegas, where a video segment gives us some backstory exposition about Stark. Tony is heralded as being the man who protects America's interests around the globe with his weapons technologies. Obadiah Stane ran Stark Industries while Tony was growing up after his father's death, and now has more of an advisory role. He is brilliantly played by Jeff Bridges, who always brings such weight and gravitas to his performances. James Rhodes is played in this film by Terrence Howard, a US Air Force acquisitions officer. I really like Terrence Howard's portrayal of Rhodes, and I kind of wish that he'd been able to stay in the role. Stark is looked after not only by his loyal bodyguard and chauffeur, Happy Hogan, played by Favreau himself, but also by his personal assistant, Pepper Potts, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, who also develops as Tony's love interest. She's fond of him, but not bowled over by his erratic ways and playboy lifestyle. The flashback concludes with Tony's demonstration of the powerful Jericho missile. After that, we catch up to Tony being taken care of in a cave, receiving emergency medical treatment. Just like that, he's gone from a powerful, well-heeled, comfortable billionaire to being stuck in a cave with shrapnel in his chest, which is being kept away from his heart by a simple electromagnet hooked up to a car battery. The indignity of it all. He's alive, all thanks to the diligent work of a doctor named Ho Yinsen, played by Sean Taub. For the first time, the film now takes a darker tonal turn. Tony is tortured for refusing to build the Ten Rings a Jericho missile. With his car battery in hand to keep him alive, the terrorists show him that they have his weapons, and he can use their equipment to reverse engineer what he needs to develop the missile. Tony gets to work, but he's actually not working on a Jericho missile. He's actually working on a prototype Iron Man suit. With Yinsen's help, they perfect the electromagnet so that Tony doesn't have to be tied to a car battery anymore. Ultimately, his escape from the cave using the first simple Iron Man suit is successful, but Yinsen is killed in the firefighting. The early suit may be a bit bulky and limited, but it is pretty great and intimidating. Also, I have to say the CGI in this film is still amazing to this day. There's a great blend of practical effects and CG, and in some ways the CG is better than the modern MCU films. This was at a point where the visual effects were not so rushed as they are these days, and incidentally, it was at a time when RDJ was, for the most part, wearing an actual practical Iron Man suit as opposed to the suit being entirely CG as it was in later movies. After he's rescued and brought back to the States, Tony quickly gives a press conference saying he'll no longer be manufacturing weapons. He feels that Stark Industries has become part of a system that is comfortable with operating with zero accountability. Obadiah immediately intervenes, alarmed by Tony's announcement. Tony wants to move into arc reactor technology, which Obi says is a dead end and just a publicity stunt. But Tony's portable arc reactor is the breakthrough and proof that it can work. During the scene where Pepper helps Tony replace his old arc reactor for a new one, she tells him not to ever ask her to do something like that again, as he tells her he doesn't have anyone else in his life like her. What I like about Tony's character development is that it's profound enough that he's given this new insight and undergone a moral and ethical transformation, but it's still a grounded and subtle enough shift in his character. He's not a radically different man to the way he used to be, just sufficiently more self-aware. He's never going to be what you describe as a humble man, that's fair to say, though he was certainly humbled for a time when he was in the cave. But he is now more driven to make better quality decisions, more aware of the potential negative consequences of his actions, and that's not just with respect to the entire world, but also those closest to him, people that he's perhaps overlooked just as easily as he's overlooked the global ramifications of Stark Industries' activities. So Tony gets to work on developing a new and improved Iron Man suit, and the testing scenes are a joy to watch, as well as offering much levity. The initial power-up scene CGI is just amazing, still incredible how good the effects were back then. Tony makes a successful first flight with the suit, albeit with a minor hiccup, and he plans a new paint job. Tension begins to grow between Obi and Tony over the direction of the company and the effects it's having on the stock price. Tony discovers that Stark Industries' weapons were used to level a town in Galmyra. He confronts Obi about this. It seems that he's been doing double deals under the table, supplying weapons to the Ten Rings. So Tony steps in with a renewed conviction. As Iron Man, he takes down the soldiers of the Ten Rings in probably the best action scene of the film. Obi visits Raza, who has retrieved the original Iron Man suit from the desert. He has the Ten Rings members killed and orders his subordinates to develop a prototype Iron Man suit of his own. Tony wants Pepper to go and investigate where all the recent shipping manifests of Stark weapons have gone. He wants to go and destroy them. This is the most important scene in the film. Pepper refuses to be part of this, knowing that Tony is putting his life at risk, but as he tells her, he shouldn't be alive. Unless it was for a reason. A lot of people are dead because of Stark weapons, and he now knows in his heart that what he's doing is the right thing. Speaking of, Obi immobilizes Tony with a short-term paralysis device and steals his personal arc reactor. Eventually retrieving the old one that Pepper kept, Stark goes to intercept Obi in the new suit. A fight between Iron Man and Ironmonger ensues. Now, I've always found Obi's transformation into the principal bad guy of the film a little bit too rushed. In the end, Ironmonger is just too over the top and arch in the final fight. All of the subtlety that made the character of Obadiah Stane work so well seems to just evaporate in the last few minutes of the film. Pepper helps Tony defeat Obi by causing an overload in the Stark building's reactor, which leads to a pretty generic big boom ending. Tony refuses to go along with the official statement given to him by Agent Coulson of S.H.I.E.L.D. That little bit of bad boy Tony still remains after all. He tells the media he is Iron Man. Iron Man 1 is probably the best of the three Iron Man films. The second film was kind of weak by comparison, and the third film was decent enough, but this one works because it's such a brilliant take on the superhero origin story, following the basic formula but adding to it so much. RDJ was incredibly well cast as Tony Stark and elevates the film well beyond the script. I think it remains not only one of the best MCU movies, but probably a film that will be looked at in a few years as a superhero classic. Of course, the MCU would go on to peak in terms of quality with Phase 3, but this first chapter broke the ground for the biggest cinematic franchise in history, and it is such an easy watch, and always a good time. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe for more, hit that like button, and share this video. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.